May or may not know, the AP government exam is coming up very, very, very soon, uncomfortably soon. And in class, we have finished all of our units, so we have gone back and started doing Unit 1 reviews and stuff. So today we take guided notes. So in light of that, I'm going to share with you everything you need to know about AP Gov Unit 1, aka Foundations of American Democracy. You will learn at the very beginning of the course. This is one of the first things you get taught, is the whole concept of enlightenment and enlightenment thought. And this is this time period where a bunch of Europeans, like philosophers, had all these very progressive, very liberal ideas of how government should act. And some of those are natural rights, which essentially are saying you are born with rights. You are a person, you are born with rights. Those rights cannot be taken away from you simply because they weren't ever given to you. You're not given something. If the government doesn't give you something, they can't take away something. So if you're not given something, like rights, like you are born a person, you have freedom, you have free will, you have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, you cannot have that taken away from you simply because it was never a thing given to you. This is very much seen in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. Next is popular sovereignty, which is the idea that the power of government is funded by, not funded, but like spiritually funded by the people. Government cannot run if they have no one to govern, essentially. So the government is run by the people, and it should stay that way, and there should never be a tyranny. And essentially, the government wouldn't be a thing if the people weren't there to run it, so it is therefore run by the people. The third one I'm going to talk about is more of a conservative idea, and it is the idea of social contract, which is just saying that citizens give up certain rights in order to have social order and have a functioning government. For example, you do, in this society, you give up the freedom of being able to speed, going 70 to school zone with the right. You are protecting younger children, people, just making the streets safer, but you do have to give up certain rights for that to happen. So it's a give and negate, like a gotta compromise. So all three of these ideas were formed together, which is what birthed the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. And most people, like myself, by the time you are in 9th grade or whenever you're taking AP Government, you know what those two documents are by now. But you kind of just learn more about how these ideas of enlightenment apply in these, such as having natural rights. And Great Britain was taking away the government's or the Americans' natural rights. And so they were like, hey, that's not good. I think we should, something's wrong here. I think we should cut this off, like cut ties here. Next three things I'm going to talk about are the different types of democracy, which, if I'm being completely honest, show up in Unit 1 and 2, isn't brought up at all in units 3 through 5, but will come up on the AP exam. Most commonly seen in like argumentative essay prompts is what I've seen. So don't worry about that. First up is the participatory form of democracy, and that is what the framers, aka the founding fathers who wrote the Constitution, that's basically what they had in mind and what everyone really thinks the American government is. Honestly, it is where you have citizens who directly vote for laws, for policymakers, for your president. It's when citizens are involved in literally everything. Everything, you don't get a break. You vote on everything. You vote on what the drinking age is going to be. You vote for all these different things. So the citizens are always involved, always being represented. And next is the pluralist form of democracy. And that is where you have these groups, these interest groups or factions that get together and affect, there are these groups of people who have special interest on specific things. Like they really, really like the environment. They want to abolish all of these pollution whatevers to like help the environment. They will have different groups of people that are affecting the policies and like the laws that are being made. And you see that a lot with interest groups and things within Congress. The third idea of democracy, which is the elite form of democracy. And that is where you have these educated and very wealthy policymakers and people and electors who vote for policy changes and like run the government. It was so you didn't have a lot of rebellion and overthrow the government from very impoverished and unwise people, and you had very sophisticated people running the government. Therefore, we had a good functioning government. Now, not only one of these is seen in our form of government today, we have all three of them widely seen in different ways, such as the elite form of democracy being in the Electoral College, which we'll get to later, the pluralist, because again, there are different interest groups that help affect policy, and then there's participatory, of course, because adults vote in elections. You have to be very, very, very comfortable with by the time the AP exam rolls around is federalism, and it's essentially just the idea of states and federal government sharing power. So when the Americans were originally in the 13 colonies, they were under the rule of the tyranny of King George III. And so they wanted to get as far away as possible from this whole construct of government. So they created the Articles of Confederation originally, which is going to be in a separate video for foundational documents. Because I'm going to very briefly skim over those, because that's a very in-depth other video. And so they created this document that gave states all of the power, which was very problematic, which, again, I'll get to. So when we made the Constitution, they wanted shared power with the federal government and state power and state government. So it's like balanced, and it's equal, and it all works. Like, they don't have, not one system has all of the power, essentially. Federalism is states and government both have the power. Think like different states have different drinking ages, but murder is still legal in every state. That one federal power and then one state power, because states can't make murder legal in one state and the others not, because that's, again, very problematic. So the Articles of Confederation, aka the first foundational document of the government of America when we won the Revolutionary War, which you should know about from like 5th grade. That was very problematic because it gave very, very, very little power to the national government. There actually wasn't even a national government because they were so fearful of having another king that can just take all the rights away and all these things. So they made a very, very weak national government, and then states. It's basically like 13 different countries that were all just living right next to each other. They had different currencies. National government could not raise an army. They could not collect taxes and like fund anything because they're just like, they could not, like, there's nothing they could do. They had no power. And they also had to have 13, unanimous decision between all these different countries, essentially, has to agree to amend this Constitution. So this obviously brought up some issues. So within a few years, they had to be like, hold a convention, be like, guys, this is not working. This is worse than the situation we were in. Like, this is worse than King George. Like, this is terrible. This is just anarchy at this point. So they held the Constitutional Convention where they came up with some compromises that I'm going to talk about. First is the Great Compromise, which deals with representation, because representation has always been a big thing. Because if you're voting in the participatory democracy, you're going to want your voice to be heard. Because when you vote, you're not voting just for the hell of it. You're doing it because you want to make a difference. So when people vote, they want representation. Representation is how many electors you have per state. And so, I don't know if that makes sense. I'm pretty sure if you're watching this, you should have some idea of what I'm saying because you're taking an AP class. Come on now. And so, the Great Compromise was a little remix of two plans. The Virginia plan and the New Jersey plan. The Virginia plan said, hey, I think the states should have the number of electors based off of their state's population. So, say California that has not back then, but now, California has a giant population. They'll have 50 electors, but Rhode Island will have 2 electors. And they're like, that sounds fair because I don't think a state of 500,000 people should get the same amount of power as the people in a 2,000 person population state. And so they were like, that sounds great. I think we should have the bigger states were like, I think we should have it be based off of population, this sounds great to us. And so of course the smaller states are like, wait, hold on. That means we're gonna have like 3 votes per state. And so they proposed the New Jersey plan, which said, I think it's fair. We're all states. We're all the same level. Like, even though some of us are bigger than others, we're all the same level. I think we should all have the same amount of electors just because that's fair. And so the bigger states were like, no, that's not fair. And the smaller states were like, no, that's not fair. So they were like, hey guys, everyone at the Constitutional Convention decided, hey guys, let's compromise. The great compromise. Let's have a great compromise. And basically, the end result of this was a bicameral legislature between the House and the Senate. Again, if you're taking this course, I'm hoping you have heard those words before, Senate and House. And so the Senate is a part of the legislative branch. And if you don't know what the 3 branches of government are by now, then honestly drop out of this class. Like, please. The Senate is the part of the House that has equal representation between all the states. Each state is represented equally because they're all states at the end of the day. And then the House of Representatives has each state, they have a different number of representatives based off of how big the state is and how much people they have there. I feel like I kind of went over this, but the Electoral College is a model of elite democracy that is how the president is actually chosen. A very common misconception is that people, like the citizens, vote directly for the president, and the president is just whoever the popular vote is. That is wrong. Citizens vote, right? They vote whoever they want, and then based off of how they vote, they take the representatives in the electors in each district, and they have them vote for the president, right? So that's basically what it is. They decided that the Constitutional Convention, this was smartest, just in case there was a huge mob of immature, unwise citizens that would like to overthrow the government. And just to make sure they're doing like a wise thing, they're not electing some dictator or some deranged man or something. So they have a wise, more wealthy, educated group of people voting for the president, just like another filtration system, just to make sure. The 3/5 compromise is essentially the southern states had slaves, the northern states didn't have slaves. The southern states were like, hey, we have so many more people than they're being counted because we have slaves, and that's like we have almost like a 2-to-1 ratio of of masters to slaves. And so they were like, I think we should have the slaves be represented. And the northerners like, oh, you didn't think there were people before. You thought there was objects before, right? So no, you don't get to count them. Like, make them be free, then you can count them. And so they came up with a compromise that each slave is worth 3/5 of a person. So when the census was counted, they counted each slave as 3/5 of a person to kind of balance out how representation was going to work. A term that I see a lot that I really did not know what meant, like on a bunch of my quizzes and tests, was advice and consent, which is basically where whatever the president does, like if he wants to appoint someone, if he wants to do something, like make treaties, the Senate has to approve of it. That's blatantly what it is. The last thing, because again, they make it seem like you need to know so much more than you actually do. And I'm also excluding the foundational documents, which is kind of a big part of this unit. So I'm making a different video about that. This is just like the terminology kind of. But some of the last things you need to know are the powers. So the powers in the Constitution. And the Constitution has 7 articles that explain basically the manuals. I had a previous video about that, so go watch that video. But the different powers listed in there are exclusive powers, which is just like powers that are blatantly set in the Constitution. Like, government has the power to levy taxes. They can declare, or they can tax people. They can regulate interstate commerce. They can do these things. Reserved powers are powers that are given to the states, that are left for the states. A huge example of this is education and how there are varying education laws through state by state, because That's also implied powers, I think. Yeah, it's implied powers because it's not ever said, oh, states get to decide drinking age, states get to decide voting age, states get to decide voter ID laws, states get to do all these things. It's just implied because it's not given to the federal government, and the 10th Amendment states that any power not given to the federal government is that of the states. And concurrent powers, which I actually did not know very well, is just powers shared by the federal government and the state government, such as making laws. Or I don't really know what other examples there are, but that's what that is. And lastly, there are grants. And also, if you're watching this video, I'm hoping you're taking the class because I'm not going very in depth like Heimler does. I'm just doing this. So first of all, I can learn, I can review this, and also just so you can know from a past AP student what you actually need to know, because I have this whole review sheet and I'm just going over the things that you need to know. Like you're cramming in for a test tomorrow. This is what you need to know, or your AP exams tomorrow. Like if you're in that situation, girl, like this is what you need to know, like the basics. And last thing is categorical grants, which is basically blocks of money given to states by the federal government to fund projects. There are two main types: is categorical grants and block grants. Categorical grants are grants that are like, okay, Delaware, here is $2 million. You must create a highway. It must be 75 miles long, and it has to have 35 exits on it. Whatever. It has to have guidelines. There must be rules and like regulations. Block grants, on the other hand, are just sums of money that's like, hey, Pennsylvania, this is for labor. And they can do whatever the hell they want to do with that money. Whatever they want to define as labor, like it has to be somewhat relevant. You can't take it and be like, oh, this is an education fund, I'm going to go give it to the casinos. Like, no. You has to be somewhat relevant. But that's pretty much all you need to know for that. I'm going to have another foundational documents video, but for now, this is all you need to know to get you by. If you know most of this stuff, you should be fine. And when it comes to the Enlightenment thoughts, for my teacher, there was like one quiz where you need to know like one of the people that founded these, but overall, you should know the ideas because they're commonly seen in the foundational documents. Peace out, guys. If I left anything out of the video, please let me know. Please let me know.